To begin our public hearing. My name is Rob Champetti. I have the privilege of serving as the zoning board chair. With me this evening to my immediate left is Mr. Stephen Delisle, our secretary. To his left, Mr. Gregory Bennick, member. To his left, Mr. Larry Ginta, associate member. We have joining us via Zoom, Mr. Ken Swanton, also member, and I believe Ms. Lynn Scow will be joining us live as well. Ms. Scow is one of our associate members. What I'd like to do before we get started is just sort of go through our business before we get things going on the public meeting. We'll start with a roll call, establish our legal quorum. I'll also designate for the record our 5 voting members, though at the moment we have 4 in the room and 1 on Zoom. So it seems perfunctory, but we'll do it anyway. For the record, and then I'll go through a quick sort of synopsis of how the Zoning Board of Appeals runs. For those of you that perhaps may not have been to a public hearing of this nature, I'd just like to lay out the framework and the structure of this evening's business, so that anyone here or anyone who may arrive who is here to speak in connection with an application, here to speak in support of or in opposition to, or just in an application, we'll understand sort of the format and have an expectation as to workflow. Once we get through that quick sort of synopsis, we'll get into the public hearings and we'll follow the agenda as it's published. While we're doing this live here in the room, of course, we are also simultaneously casting this via Zoom, a holdover and a vestige of the COVID and post-COVID era. So with respect to that, when it comes to things that are public participation, like public comment, we both poll those in the room as well as those online. And we will be doing our best to put up on the big board everything that is being discussed, so that anyone who is following along remotely will see what you see. And what you see will be run by Caitlin Sullivan, to my far right, our city planner. Caitlin will be running the brains of the operation in more ways than one, and we'll be putting up all of the slides and other materials that are being referenced or being referred to by any applicant along the way, so that you needn't have papers in front of you that you're welcome to, and you can just simply look at the board and see what's being discussed and referred to. Whatever you see there to our right is also being broadcast to the Zoom parties as well, both Mr. Swanton, who we see up there just to the right. Hello, Mr. Swanton. And,
hello.
And else who might be logging on. So without further ado, allow me to, having introduced the board, allow me to quickly call the roll. We'll establish our quorum, our 5 voting members, and we'll get underway. Okay, calling the roll of the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals for our hearing evening of November 12th, 2024, Mr. Stephen Delisle. Here, Mr. Swanton.
Actually, now that you have 5 voting members without me, I think I'm going to bow out.
Very good. That's fine, Ken. And thank you for logging in and making yourself available. I know that you know, it's no small feat for any of us, but thank you for being here, and you can go ahead and just drop off of the call, and we'll just deal with it in the room. Thank you, sir.
So long.
All right. Mr. Walter Shannon is absent. Mr. Bennett? Yes. Ms. Lynn Scow?
Here.
Mr. Larry Ginta? Present. And Rob Champetti, I'm present. So that is 5 members present. That we require only 4 to have a minimum quorum. Our 5 voting members will therefore be the 5 members in the room this evening. Myself, Mr. Delisle, Mr. Bennett, Ms. Scow, and Mr. Ginta. Okay, so having established our quorum, having established our roll call and our 5 voting members, we'll get into our public hearings this evening, and we'll begin with the first public hearing on the agenda. But before we do, I'd just like to take a moment and just go through, for those of you that have been here before, allow me to apologize in advance for the quick snapshot of what we do. For anyone who's either here for the first time or online, what I typically do on our public hearings is simply describe what to expect. So with each public hearing, I'll begin by reading the legal notice by description, by property address, and by applicant. So we'll read the applicant, the description, and the property address, so that anyone following along will understand which application is being heard. And I also described the relief being sought by the applicant, whether the applicant's seeking a variance, a special permit for non-conformities, and then getting more granular to simple language. The applicant seeks all necessary permits to fill in the blanks, which will be described as, demolish and reconstruct a sunroom or three-season porch or whatever the case may be, so that, God forbid, no one need be an attorney to actually understand what's happening, with ZBA and what we're being asked to consider. Once I read the legal notice and introduce the application, we'll then hear from the applicant, which is the first stage of the process. The applicant will present, and whether the applicant's representatives, attorney, engineer, architect, all of the above. We will then hear that presentation, usually supported by, but not always, a PowerPoint, which Ms. Sullivan, our city planner, will run through. Once the applicant's completed with that presentation, we'll close that portion of the public hearing and go to public comment. Public comment we'll have a slide that Planner Sullivan will put up on the board, which simply describes a quick placard of the rules of the road. We ask everyone to govern themselves accordingly with respect to a 2-minute time limit. Of course, as chair, I have discretion and almost universally extend it, wherever, whenever, within reason. We just ask that anyone giving public comment kindly just be mindful of the fact that we want to hear from everyone and anyone. So I will ask that you try to govern your comments with respect to that time limit-ish. I'll let you know as courteously as possible if we're running grievously long, but in the absence of that, we'd like to hear the beginning, middle, and end of any comment. Feel free to mention if you're pro or con an application, but by no means do you have to fall into either of those linear columns. You can say that you are, but you can simply just rise and give us your name and address for Ms. Gretchen Joy who's sitting to my right. Ms. Gretchen Joy has the unenviable task of writing down everything that we say. So if you can give your name and address and then just simply let us know your thoughts. You don't have to say you're for or against, though you're welcome to. Once we finish public comment, I go through the room initially and then we'll poll our online audience if we have any. And then we will close that portion of public comment. Please know that if you do give comment in the form of a question, we mean you no discourtesy if you do not hear a specific response to your question from us. That's no intent to be discourteous by the board members, but rather just sort of our adherence to an informal Robert's Rules of Order. We will hear your comments and you may very likely hear your question reframed by one of the members in the third section of our hearing, which is questions from the board. So take heart, we're not ignoring any of those questions. Your comment can be framed as a question. We just cannot and wouldn't be able to answer it affirmatively for you at that moment. But members will be listening, taking notes, and you may hear that question in the form of questions from the board. We'll go through any questions from the board, at which point we close that portion of the public hearing and go to the final section, which is deliberations, when we deliberate the legal criteria of the application and the relief being sought, and we'll go through the elements that are necessary in order to find in favor of an applicant's request. And you essentially just hear us deliberate out loud, as is aligned with the open meeting statute here in the Commonwealth. And so you will just hear us deliberate and discuss the legal criteria and the details of the application. Once we've concluded, I close that final portion of the public hearing and entertain or invite, I should say, a motion to approve by any member. Again, just always it'll be offered in the affirmative. It will be offered in the form of a motion to approve. Doesn't mean that member intends to support it or plans to vote in favor of it. It's simply the mechanism by which it's placed before us for a second and then a vote. In order for the application to be successful, 4 members of the board, the 5 members that are here this evening, must vote in the affirmative. 4 members must vote yes. In that instance, the motion would carry and the application would be approved. And that's essentially it. So thank you for your indulgence and apologies again for that. I was trying to get that out so that folks know what to expect. So without further ado, we'll open our public hearings this evening and go into our first application, which I believe is a request for a continuance. It's BP Merrimack LLC, 310-312 Merrimack Street and 3 Woodland Street. It's a variance request and a special permit request. We have a request for a continuance, and Caitlin, we have a date already requested?
December 10th.
December 10th. Okay, do we have a motion, to continue the application to December tenth as requested by the applicant, and do we have a second?
I'll make the motion to continue the hearing for 310 to 312 Merrimack Street and 3 Woodland Street to the meeting of December 10th.
Very good. Motion's made to continue to December tenth by Mr. Delisle and seconded by Mr. Bennett. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Calling the roll on the motion to continue, Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Ginton.
Yeah.
Ms. Scout.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. Is the affirmative, pardon me. The ayes have it. Motion carries, and the matter is continued to the tenth. Okay, going to our first application that I believe will be going forward this evening. This is the application represented by Attorney Douglas DeShanes, 44 Mosley Avenue. The applicant seeks all necessary permits, permissions, and approvals for a special permit for nonconformities. This is an application requesting to raise the existing single-family structure and replace it with a new single-family in similar location on a non-conforming lot. Attorney DeShanes, good evening.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. I did bring a couple extra copies of my presentation if somebody wants to see one or can't see things as well as I can. I also brought you an 11/17 of the site plan. And lastly, some copies of a petition that was circulated by the neighbors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. Douglas DeShane from Finneran and Nicholson, representing Mary Beth and Matthew Lonigan. They are the owners of the property. With me this evening, Gene Allen, our architect, and Everett Chandler was our professional licensed surveyor who did the site plan. Everett is not with us. And in fact, I'm sorry to say, my clients couldn't attend this evening as they had long-term plans to be away. And just so happened the meeting happened to be the week they were away. So thank you for that. To give you a quick project summary, if we can go to the next slide, please. The Lonigans would like to raise the existing 1.5-story home and garage and essentially reconstruct a 2-story home with an attached garage. Single-family home will remain a single-family home. As determined by the zoning enforcement officer, we need a special permit finding from this board under section 9B, extensions and alterations, for 2 reasons. One, we are proposing an upward extension of the front and side yard setbacks, which are currently non-conforming. Also, we are increasing the size of the structure on a non-conforming lot by more than 500 square feet. Next slide, please. The existing conditions, the existing home, we are in an R2 zone. The existing lot is pre-existing non-conforming at 8,614 square feet, where 10,000 is required, so close but not close enough. The lot is, however, conforming as to the lot frontage at 177 feet, whereas 90 feet is required. The existing structure, the home, is pre-existing non-conforming as to 2 dimensional setbacks. The front yard setback is currently at 18.8 feet, where 25 feet is required, and the side setback right side is 3.7 feet, where 10 feet is required. So what are the zoning impacts of the proposed changes? The new home will result in the following impacts to the pre-existing non-conforming structure. Again, the front yard setback, we're proposing an upward extension. The rear right side setback, upward extension. In all, we will be adding 1,503 square feet of living area to the home. Currently, the existing home has 1,666 square feet. And again, the total will be 3,169. I do want to point out that of the 1,500 square feet we're adding to the home, just around 600 square feet of it is represented in the shop that's proposed over the garage. So about 900 feet of true living space is being added. We are not creating any new nonconformities with this reconstruction. It will meet all other dimensional regulations, as we'll see in a moment, including lot coverage, open space requirements, and height. We are not proposing any changes to the pre-existing non-conforming lot, so that won't change in any way. What I'd like to do now is just give you a quick walk around the neighborhood to give you an idea of some of the structures, what this structure looks like, what the abutting structures are like, so that I can show that this proposed new home will certainly fit within the character of the Maudsley Avenue neighborhood. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with a picture here. What I'd like to do is sort of walk you, oops, sorry. It never worked when you want me to. And then I'll just walk you around the home here and show you all the abutting properties as well as the properties across the street. But first, on the next slide, I'm gonna show you a quick, if we go to the next, there we go. This is our proposed site plan. And what this shows us is this jagged line here represents the footprint of the existing home. Here's the garage, is sort of a breezeway that connects it, and here's the existing home. We are gonna go up on these outside walls. So this will be the upward extension on the right side. This will represent an upward extension on the front yard setback. And then of course, this is the footprint of the new structure. So essentially going up over the existing house and then this added section here. I'd also like to point out that we are changing the location of the driveway. Currently, the driveway is here off of Mosley Avenue. My clients are moving the driveway off to the side, off of New Street, which would be greatly beneficial to the property and to Maudsley, that they won't have to be backing out onto that street anymore. And in fact, we'll now come over here. We've received comments from the DPS. They are fine with the new curb cut here. I think they agree that it's a much safer access to the home. And we are gonna have to repair some sidewalks here and provide a new street tree here. And I suspect my client will put a street tree here as well, just to make it look nicer. So we're more than happy in meeting the DPS requirements. So again, this reflects the proposed footprint of the new structure. So let me show you some pictures, if you could. I'm sorry, this is out of order. This is the existing footprint of the existing home. As you can see, it's we've got a first floor here, garage, and then upstairs is an open bedroom area. If we go to the next one, Phil, and here we go. Here is an elevation of the existing home. Our existing height, as I was just talking with Gene about, we're just under 16 feet in height here. It's, if you look over here, it's like 15.9. But that's the elevation of the existing home. If we go to the next slide, these are just the elevations of the two ends of the existing home, this being the garage, this being the right side. And then lastly, there should be an elevation of the rear of the home as it sits today. So there is our existing conditions. Again, our median roof height is just under 16 feet. And we'll be going up to just under 26 feet. So about a 9 to 10 foot increase in height, but we will still be well below the limit of 35 feet. Will be some 9 feet below that. Next slide, please, Caitlin. Thank you very much. So these are the elevation drawings of the new home. This is the front elevation that will be facing Maudsley Avenue. And then the garage is over here on the right off of New Road. This is the elevation, the right, left elevation that will be facing New Road. You can see that our main entrance and our garage will now be on the side. And then at the other side, we have the right side elevation here. And then this is our rear elevation with the garage being here. And again, this new structure is proposed to be at 25 feet, 9.5 inches in median height. Next slide. These are the floor plans for the new home. As you can see, they are proposing to put a master bedroom suite on the first floor with dining and living space and bathrooms and laundry. And then upstairs will be 3 additional bedrooms and bathrooms, 1 bathroom. And then this is the shop room that's proposed over the new garage. My clients, as I understand, this home has been in my client's family for a long time. She grew up in this home, and so now she's rebuilding it. They're rebuilding it so that her and her husband can retire here. So that's why they're putting the first floor master and, you know, so they can age in place. But interesting story that this has been in her family for years and where she grew up, where Mary Beth grew up. So if we go to the next slide, I think, you know, that's the basement floor plan. Sorry to bore you with that one. I'm sorry, Kate, I know we're gonna get to a picture eventually here. Oh, well, last drawing. This was just the height calculation drawing, show you how we calculated the new height. So again, 25, 9.5. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay, this is my client's property at 44 Mosley Avenue. As you can see, 1.5 stories with attached garage here. If we now move to the next slide, this is the home to the right. This is the side where this portion of the house is currently 3.7 feet off the boundary line. I do want to tell you that the neighbors here are more than happy with our proposal because in fact, my clients own that home as well. Their daughter's living there, and I think our clients are gonna move in there while the new house is done, and then they'll move into the new house, and the daughter will continue to live next door. Next slide. We're sort of moving down Mosley. This is the neighbor's home where the daughter is living, so you can see our structure is over here, and there's the immediate abutter to the right, and then the next slide shows the next abutter down the road, and as you can see, it is a full 3-story multi-family home of substantial size. Next slide, I think just gives you a sort of a picture of the 3 homes. Here's the home that's to be reconstructed. The neighbor to the right sits back here, and then the multi-family is here. So that just gives you an idea of the neighborhood to that side. Now, next slide will take us to the left side of the home. This is the home to be reconstructed. This is where the new driveway will be. But this is our neighbor in the back. And I think the next slide will show you a close-up of that home. You can see it too is 2 stories of reasonable size, much in line with what we're proposing. And I did provide you a list of abutters that have signed a petition in support. My neighbors took their plans and went around to all their immediate abutters and then some. And I will point out to you that this abutter to the rear has signed to support this project. The next slide will sort of take us around. Now this is, again, to the right side of our home. This is New Street. And again, our new curb cut will be just in front of this truck coming into the new home. These are the 2 homes directly across New Street. This neighbor has also signed the petition, and I believe the owner of this home is here to testify that she's okay with it as well. That is in fact Jean's home. So we have all of our abutters on New Street in support of our project. So that shows you our side of the street. And now if we could go to the next slide, I'm now standing with my back to the home. And so when I looked across to the right, there's a 1-story home here, although it does not front on Mosley. It's actually fronting on this street over here. So it's quite a ways across from us. Roosevelt, thank you very much. I actually wrote that down. Next slide, I think it will now, there's that yellow home. And if you look down across from us, this is the house directly across, and this large structure is sort of kitty corner to the left. So this is what is across the street from us. And I think there's one more slide. This is, there's Roosevelt here. if you continue to look down Roosevelt or down Mosley, you can see there's substantial sized homes, all around us. There's a couple of small ranches, but, the majority of them are 2.5, or in some cases 3 stories in height. And I think I finished up with just a couple of pictures of Mosley Ave, some of the new construction just down the street from us. You can see, as we all know, most new construction in this area is of significant size. Most of these are actually bigger than the 3,000 square feet that we're proposing. And I think there may be, again, just an example of some of the new construction on Mosley. And then last one there, again, 2.5 stories. And I think the next slide is my conclusion. There we go. Well, thank you for listening. I wanted to give you a good feel of the neighborhood. As we will recall, it depends neighborhood to neighborhood, how the neighbors feel about, some of these bigger homes or, homes being made bigger. We just wanted to make sure that this one was acceptable to the neighbors and in keeping with the neighborhood. So in conclusion, the new home will be more functional and sustainable for my clients. First floor living is what they're shooting for. Will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. New home meets our height requirements, open space, lot coverage regulations, so we're not overcrowding. The proposed new home will not impair the integrity or character of the district, as it's been designed to be consistent with the architecture of the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed structure is certainly in keeping with many of those surrounding buildings, especially those recently redeveloped or improved upon. The new home size, scale, and massing is generally in keeping with Mosley Ave. As I told you, we do have some ranches, but then we have some multi-family, very large structures. There's a condo project just down a couple houses from New Street, very large. Construction we've done in conformance with all state and building codes, so we're not gonna have any adverse impacts to the environment or the neighborhood. We are proposing energy efficient development here, and again, minimizing environmental and neighborhood impacts. Aesthetically, the proposed new home arguably constitutes an improvement over the smaller ranch that's there. It'll increase the value of this property as well as the surrounding neighborhoods. And in terms of detriment to health and welfare of this neighborhood, the maintenance improvement of the city's existing housing stock is always beneficial to the health and welfare and to the neighborhood. And of course, there is that little increase in tax revenue that will be generated for the city in redeveloping this home. So bottom line, I think my clients have done a great job of designing something that fits in the neighborhood, is not overly large, but will meet their needs. They've met with their neighbors, they've discussed it. We've got sig sign off from I believe all of the abutting neighbors. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Attorney DeShanes, and thank you, Ms. Allen, for your presentation. With that, we'll close the presentation portion of the public hearing and go to public comment. Anyone in the room wish to speak in connection with the application? Seeing no hands, do we have any hands on? Do we have anyone online?
Yeah, there's one person there.
Anyone online, or I should say our one individual online? If you wish to be heard in connection with this application, just go ahead and raise your hand virtually and we'll unmute your mic and recognize you. Seeing no hands online and none in the room, we'll close public comment and go to questions from the board. Mr. Lyle, anything to start?
Yeah, couple questions. Can you go over how the height was calculated again?
Sure. The existing or the proposed?
The proposed.
Okay, so that's,
It's right there.
it's right there. I just gave you a copy of that if you want to look at it. And if you want to look at the calculation, Gene, if you could just walk through that calculation.
You determine the mean grade elevation. And then you take that dimension and you add it to first floor, top of first floor. and then add it to the, mean roof height. And that gives you the mean roof elevation.
Which in this instance is, it comes out to 25.5 inch.
25, 9.5 inches. It's almost a flat side.
Excuse me, it's almost what?
It's almost a flat side.
I see.
So the average elevation, grade elevation is pretty
Oh, yeah, right.
flat. We don't have a lot of changes from side to side.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any other questions, thanks.
Very good. Mr. Bennett, any questions?
Could you just comment on the exterior building materials that you propose?
Cedar, clapboard, and then, cedar shakes, combination of both. And New England style double hung windows. Asphalt roof shingles, so, the neighboring house on, 3 New Street, they have shingles, cedar shingles, so we're going to, use a similar shingle. And then there's several clapboard sided houses in the neighborhood, we're using covered siding, so it's contextual.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Very good. Mr. Ginter, any questions? I have no questions. Good. Ms. Scott, any questions?
Have no questions.
I have none either. Thank you. We'll close questions from the board and move to deliberations. And again, we're deliberating the criteria for a special permit for nonconformities. Does anyone wish to jump in with the criteria and where we fall?
I'll give it a go.
Thank you, Mr. Berry.
As we all know, there are 2 hurdles that have to be cleared here by the applicant. First hurdle is whether or not there are any new nonconformities. There are no new nonconformities here. The second hurdle is, of course, whether or not the nonconformities that are being extended here are not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. As to that test, I would make a few observations and conclude that I find that that's hurdle has been cleared as well. First, I mean, aesthetically, one could debate about the charm of the ranch house, but I think on balance, this is an improvement aesthetically on the lot. Second, the structure proposed fits within the general architectural scheme in the neighborhood, which is somewhat eclectic and it certainly comports with the neighborhood in general. 3, the house fits within, some are larger, some are smaller in the neighborhood, but it's certainly within the notion of scale and massing fits within the neighborhood. I would note particularly the fact that lot coverage and open space requirements are comfortably met here. The height is something we always look at. My colleague identified that. It's well within the limit of 35 feet here. Importantly, strong neighborhood support. And all that being said, I am prepared to approve this application.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Ginter? Anything to add?
I really don't have anything to add. I think it was mentioned, the roof height, that's sort of what strikes you. It's a large house. Replacing a small house, but then when you find the details out of it's a family home and they're rebuilt their house to the house they want, family next door. And then they did their diligence. They went around the neighborhood and got approval. So,
Very good.
very well put together.
Thank you, Mr. Ginter. Ms. Scott?
I have nothing to add. I think my colleagues summed it up well and I'd be inclined to support.
Thank you. I'd agree with my colleagues as well, though I note that the project does trigger the sidewalk ordinance under DPS. There's been a request for a street tree. Of course, the apron to be reconstructed, sidewalk to be reconstructed in compliance with ADA standards and widths, which I think you're already aware of.
Oh, yes, we've already received that report and my clients have agreed, no.
Okay, very good. So any motion should include a reference to the replacement of at least one street tree on the New Street side of the property. Okay. With that, we'll close deliberations, and do we have a motion?
I'll move that the application for special permit for 44 Mosley Avenue be approved with condition that the applicant complies with all requirements regarding sidewalk and tree replacement.
Very good. Motion with condition has been made by Mr. Bennett. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Scow. Motion is made by Mr. Bennett and seconded by Ms. Scow. Calling the roll, Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Ginta.
Yes.
Ms. Scow.
Yes,
And Rob Champetti, I vote yes. It's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, calling the next matter on our docket here, we've got the application of Matt Bailey, 2 Spofford Street. The applicant seeks all necessary approvals and permissions and permits to construct a 6-foot stone and wood fence within the front yard setback. May we hear from the applicant?
I am Matt Bailey, I'm the owner of Mountaintop Landscape Company, representing the clients of 2 Spofford. So we've been building the project at 2 Spofford, and the variance that we're looking for right now is to install 2 feet of fence on top of a 4-foot stone wall in the front of the residence. So it's just a lattice, visual, see-through fence, not solid, that goes in between the stone pillars. And then carrying further down towards the bridge, same thing, it's gonna be a fence, but 4 feet of solid or 5 feet of solid fence, and the last 12 inches of that will be a lattice type fence. Big portion of this reason on why we're trying to do that, this is the visual that you'll have across the front of the house. So there's plantings in front of the fence, and the stone wall, and the stone wall doesn't reach anything higher than 4 feet. Notice we, at the street level, because of the way the sidewalk is, we kind of dropped the stone wall and created a detail there. Not a lot to talk about on the type of fence. We've kind of put that on hold. It will be a wood of some sort, whether that's painted, whether it's natural. Don't have that information just because of this variance. We haven't spent the time to dive into that. There'll be a sliding gate that goes across, automatic gate there that goes across the driveway. And then the gate right here, you'll see that's basically in front of the telephone pole, but that runs along the sidewalk about 18 inches, 2 feet off the sidewalk, all the way down to the bridge. The existing property there had a white vinyl fence that was existing that ran, I don't know the exact number, but didn't go all the way across the property, but it came from the bridge back into the property a good 50 feet. So we're just kind of connecting the dots. And then there was a white picket fence at the entrance there. If you could go to the existing pictures that we have. So this is the street side, please, sorry. So the columns are up, mounted on top of that wall would be, again, 2 feet of a lattice type see-through fence. And the wall ends at the telephone pole. Hard to see in this picture. You kind of take your life in your hands, try to take pictures of this site. And then all the way from the end of that to the bridge, and you can see how close the house is to the road. So a couple reasons for this is just the general safety of their grandchildren. Being in the front yard, that's, it's a very steep lot, so the yard is, accessible from basically the driveway and then the immediate backyard. The front of the house, which I call the front, which is the riverside, but it's really the back, is really inaccessible. So safety, sound, and just overall just protective, security for their property. We feel that we haven't changed, the fencing besides the wall structure out front, which again was built for just safety. It was built for aesthetics, architecture. We bumped the wall back from the existing fence that was there when the original property. That's back. I'd have to check my notes on that. It's probably like 16 feet back. So opening up the accessibility to get in and out of that driveway was also very important. Part of this was to take down some very old, dead street trees along the roadway there, which is again increased the visibility coming in and out of the residence. But we've worked with DPS and the community to replant street trees on the property, matching a 1-to-1 ratio, as well as donating this to the city to plant more throughout the city. Yeah, sure. I don't have a laser pointer because I'm a landscaper. But right here, as you can see where the mouse is, that's the wall just at the entrance kind of set back so you can comfortably get a vehicle in and out of that driveway. And right there to the bridge is where we're asking for the 5 foot of solid fence, 1 foot of topper. And you can see how close the house, 30 feet, I think is the limit that you have in their zoning to put a 6 foot fence within 30 feet of the property line. The problem with this is that 30 feet almost gets us just about through the driveway. So it's a very narrow lot. When all things came, is how we had to configure the driveway to be able to access and turn the vehicle around, so you can actually turn a vehicle around in and out of the garage to drive onto the street, not have to back onto the street.
Very good. Anything, anything further that you wanna highlight in the presentation? I mean, we have all of this in front of us as well. But
No, it's fairly self-explanatory what we're asking for. I don't think I have anything further.
great, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll close, the presentation portion of the hearing, go to, public comment. Anyone in the room? Seeing no hands, anyone online? Seeing no hands, so we'll close public comment and go to questions from the board. Anyone wanna jump out first if there's any questions?
Help me to understand this. I take it you constructed the stone fence, correct?
Correct.
I see. And was this an ad hoc decision that was made in the field that you wanted to add this additional 2 feet of lattice work? Is that how this came to be?
Under the permitting process that we went through for this, it was unbeknownst to us that we were just unaware that we needed a variance for a 6 foot fence within that just because of what was existing there. So that got skipped over. And when this went through, the real permit that we went through was all through conservation. So all this was on the original plan to go through conservation. Under the construction of this, was brought to our attention pretty quickly, that we needed a permit for all these quick regulations. So we did go and get a building permit, and that got passed through every department because we've met the criteria for the 4 feet of structure. So we're really going for that extra 2 feet and the 6 foot fence going down the property line. So zoning, I believe it's zoning, passed this portion because they weren't gonna count the columns at this current time, under the understanding that this was a fairly simple process that we're going through. So yes, it was always thought to do it this way. But it wasn't an afterthought. It was just this whole process is an afterthought,
So
unfortunately.
just help me understand the roof you're seeking. You're seeking, number one, to add the 2 feet of lattice work, correct?
Correct.
And is your request also to extend the wall down towards the
No.
river?
Nope.
That is not part of that.
Nope, the wall's the footprint as it stands in the pictures. That stays.
Okay. So the scope of your request here is the lattice work.
The lattice work and then the 6 foot fence from where we end the wall back to the bridge.
Okay,
How many feet of fence is that, sorry?
yeah,
I'm gonna say it's like 80 feet, 50 feet's existing right now, roughly. I could be off on my numbers just a little bit, but
and you want to take over here, Stephen? You might get.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry.
If you had anything further.
That's all right. Well, I'll just ask one.
Yeah.
And under our zoning ordinance, that fence would be limited to 4 feet.
depending on where you put the fence, I think up to 5 feet into the property can only be 30 inches, and then up to 12 feet into the property, beyond 5 feet.
Let me maybe my question wasn't very artful. Where you intend and are requesting to place this fence, zoning would permit you to have a 4-foot fence, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. So you're asking for an additional 6-foot fence that will run some 50 or 60 feet, is that correct?
It's probably closer to like 80 or 90, the overall, the whole fence.
Okay, Thank you.
Some of it's a little bit of a safety issue why they put it at the bridge because of where the sidewalk is. It kind of just, there's a huge drop there. So they put a fence up there to create the barrier so nobody could get up next to the bridge there. It's a very low railing.
That 90-foot expansive fence will be stone.
Nope.
It'll be the same fashion here, 4 feet.
If you look on the far right of that last picture, yeah, no problem. Right there, you can see the stonework ends and then just a 6-foot fence carries on.
And what's the nature of that fence?
That would just be a wood, I would assume. It's gonna be probably a cedar of some sort, 5 feet tall. And then the last foot is gonna be a lattice. So see
Will
through
it
it,
be a picket type fence or will it be a solid
it'll be
fence?
solid. For the first 5 feet,
Solid for the first size.
solid for the first 5, yep.
Okay. Gary,
Okay, Mr. Delisle, you had questions?
Yeah, just sort of following up, so the stone wall portion is how many feet from the corner where it begins through the driveway to the corner where it ends, how much?
The stone wall portion, I'm not understanding your question quite there. If I can pull up the site plan.
Yeah, the stone wall from the corner on the left to the place on the right where the stone wall ends, how many feet is that?
Oh, it's
Approximately.
17, 23 through 40 and another, and then it returns back to the street, so you're gonna be probably like roughly at 50.
So that's 50 feet worth of stone wall
Mhm.
plus lattice at 6 feet tall.
Stone 4, lattice would be 2.
Yeah,
on top of
so
it.
in total, it's 6 feet tall, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So that's, then, what you said, that was 50 feet?
Mhm.
Okay, so then you have that plus 80 or 90 feet, so we're looking at 130.
No, it would, so it's probably closer to like 75 from the end of the stone wall to the end. It's not as long as 90, that would, I included the wall portion of that.
Okay, so it's roughly 125 feet of 5 to 6 foot wall along parallel to Spofford Street.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you're including the wall and the fence as a wall.
Yeah, in total. Yeah, okay. That's it.
Mr. Ginta?
Was there an existing fence that stretched that 80 feet?
Yes.
And how tall was that fence?
There was one existing that was 4 feet, white picket, tall plant material around it that stretched above 6 feet. It's all ornamental grass that was in there with large rhododendron shrubs in there. And then from that point, there was a space in there. I don't know if the fence blew down before we got involved with the project. I don't know why that gap was there. But then it carried the 6 feet all the way to the bridge that's still standing today. It's still there.
That fence is 6 foot right now.
That's 6 feet. Well, it's top of fence is 6 feet, but again, it's 5 feet with a 1 foot of lattice on it and it's vinyl, like vinyl.
And the ordinance talks about, front yards. Is this the front yard of this home? This is it's kind of in a little nook.
I grew up on the river. We always consider this as a contention with everybody, but technically it's where the front door is, and the front door would be on the driveway side. So yes, I would have to think that is considered the front, but the front of the house, the architecture of the house really is from the deck all the way down towards the river. Is how it's architecturally designed, but the front door is kind of on the side, on the driveway side.
So from the owner's perspective, through you, why not a 4-foot fence? What would be the reason for a 6?
The bigger reason for the 4-foot fence is it doesn't do anything for the traffic. So, being at the elevation of the property comes up, you're sitting on the porch, you're standing on the porch, you're basically, your feet are at the height of that 4-foot fence. So if you're in your driveway, 4 feet's only to here, all the cars and the noise is right there because it's so close to the road. So the 6-foot fence just gives you a little bit more privacy from that roadway.
Yeah, I know this house well, only from driving past it every day, so
Me
I
too.
see your work that you're doing there, and I understand the conditions that you're dealing with there.
It's a very loud and noisy site.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That goes, are you?
I'm all set, thank you.
I think that goes to one of the elements that we're looking at here is that to grant a variance is that, that the lot really is unique and what you're seeking is because of the uniqueness of the lot. Can you go to there's a picture here with, like an overview. It kind of shows the topography of the lot. If you could just review that a little bit, because it does seem quite different than the standard lot in Newburyport.
It's been a challenge.
I know, it's in
the
your,
staff report.
it's in the staff report. It's like a.
Yeah.
Yeah, that,
If there is such a thing as a standard lot in Newburyport.
well, that's true.
True, true.
The leftmost image, right?
Yeah, that one, if you. So the fence is essentially along the road?
If you essentially follow that property line, the yellow line go along the road, that's pretty close to where the fence is gonna go.
And that's the bridge and that's water.
Correct.
Mhm.
So you're coming across the chain bridge, it's the first house on the right. It's like a Formula One raceway right there. But that comes around and you've got this change in the road, so everything about that property just gets you really close to the road, whether that's just puddles that cars are coming by and splashing, or that's snow that's being piled on that sidewalk, that's just increasingly challenging to deal with. And you know, as you walk out of the house where the car is parked in that driveway, that's essentially just in front of that's where the front door would be. So you come out of the house and you're just right out in the open there. The front of the house that I call the front, which is the river side of the house, takes a dramatic drop off. It's steep. I think it's probably like a 20+ foot elevation drop from house floor, basement floor to the edge of the dock. And then coming up the back of the house, we've placed a larger retaining wall along the neighbor's property there to kind of shore all that up. So overall, it's a very challenging lot where the back of that garage and the driveway are the most usable yard areas besides just transient walking through the lawn. The lawn's so steep out front.
And you mentioned that they had grandchildren, so they'll have to deal with the grandchildren on the road side as well as the water side.
The only access to come out onto the landscape there is from the first floor elevation. So it's either all the way down in the basement you can get out, or everything dumps out right between the garage and the house, or on the driveway side. And even the deck, doors that come out of the deck, everything funnels you over towards the street and down the steps, because that's how that was all laid out. So essentially, everything kind of congregates at the driveway.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great. I don't have any further questions. I know this site well. I actually live right around the corner, so I drive by it all the time. You guys have been doing pretty monumental work over there. I'm waiting for a pyramid to rise out of the site, but.
We've been there long enough. You think we get one built?
Yeah, I feel like, but the site is, I think as Pascal pointed out and others, it is unique. You know, not just by its shape and its topography, and its geotech and its hydrotech, because it's right next to the Merrimack River, navigable waterway, and it's got unique features with respect to that bridge, not the least of which are noise. I imagine that's the principal reason, you know, on rainy days, cars are 3x louder.
It depends on the day, but there's a few different things. I mean, one is just very loud. And then two,
Right.
it's hard to kind of.
So this request, and how was it brought to your attention? Or did?
The violation.
Okay. You know what? I didn't mean to force you to say that out loud.
No problem.
I just was curious if somehow it was just discovered by.
We tried to take every step in the permitting process here to try to bring everything together, and somehow between our DP consultants, our landscape architects, and the engineers, this one slipped through.
No, I mean, understood. Okay, any further questions before we close questions? We'll close questions and thank you, for the detail, Matt. We'll go into deliberations. So again, in deliberating this application, we have to consider the, variance criteria. And so some of it's been discussed during questions from the board, but why don't we try to sort of distill that down and synthesize that in quick deliberations, I suppose. You want to clean things off?
Sure. Okay, so we've got a request for a
6 foot tall or 5 to 6 foot tall fence in the front yard setback. And that is not allowed under, what is it, 6F6 or something like that? That's the section in the zoning ordinance. Yeah, VIF6. So that's a piece of the zoning ordinance that applies to all zoning districts, right? So it's not a dimensional type thing where, in one zoning district, you have the 25-foot setback, and another zoning district, you have a 10-foot setback. Here, this particular ordinance applies to all zoning districts. And so we have a front yard with a busy street. And see, the thing for me is I'm having a hard time with this because I think that there are lots of streets in Newburyport that are pretty busy, lots of streets that have houses that are pretty close. So just to put a 6-foot fence and start doing that, I think that's probably the reason why city council put this section VIF6 in place, is to prohibit wall-like structures in the front yard. So I'm having a hard time with this, kind of with all the 4 factors. Maybe not 3. 3 is the unique conditions and circumstances that are not the result of the actions of the applicant. That one's probably fine for me. But 1, the conditions and circumstances are unique to the applicant's lot, structure, or building, and do not apply to neighboring land, structures, or buildings in the same district. I think that there's probably lots of houses in the same district that are right on the street, on Spofford Street and going off the Rotary. There's lots of houses that are pretty darn close, I think. And number 2, I don't think the strict application of the provision really will deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the lot, structure, building in a manner equivalent to the uses permitted by other owners. So I'm having a hard time with that one too. So that's sort of where I am on this.
Very good. We can circle back and further discuss, Mr. Bennett.
I echo the comments 100%. This application falls woefully short of meeting the criteria for a variance. The unique characteristics of the lot bear no connection to this, whether the fence is 4 feet or 6 feet or 20 feet or 1 foot. So the characteristics of the lot is irrelevant. My colleague said there are plenty of noisy streets in Newburyport. This is noisy, I'll admit it, but it certainly is no noisier than High Street or Merrimack Street or any other street, many other streets in the city. This is a very ambitious project, and it's a wonderful project, but I can't vote for this. There's no way that any of these criteria, in my estimation, have been met for a variance. And I think there are equally elegant, refined, tasteful ways to fence which meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance and meet the requirements of the landowner here. The notion of safety of children, take that with a massive grain of salt. A 4-foot fence provides adequate protection. City council has made that determination. I don't think you need a 6-foot fence for that. All in all, I see no evidence to support this request.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Ginta.
Well, my comment on this, and I understand the 4 points of the criteria. Just with this, I do think it's a unique property, just because of where it's positioned in. I feel like if this property was on a highway, there would be a call for a barrier wall between the road and the property for safety, for noise, and a host of other things. There is a tremendous amount of traffic that goes by this property every day, makes it quite unique. It's also coming off a bridge and goes around a corner. So I realize this criteria is pretty tough to make. But if there was a property that deserved a 6-foot fence for noise and safety, it's probably that corner.
Very good. Ms. Scott?
I tend to, I understand that this is it's tough to get a variance, they make it purposefully tough to get a variance, but I guess my view is more like Mr. Jinta's view, that it seems like quite a unique lot to me. I don't know of any other, lots except for maybe the one across the street that come out on a bridge like that. And there's a drop off there, and, it does seem rather completely dangerous to me. I mean, there's no way I would have ever bought that lot with small children. So I kind of, I veer towards more that it is a unique lot, and it would deprive me of reasonable use not to have some sort of a fence that's a safety fence. And you know, I don't know about you, but I have 3 boys, and no 4-foot fence is keeping them into anything. So I would be inclined to support it based on the criteria.
I think, thank you, Ms. Scott. I think I agree with my colleagues, Ms. Scott and Mr. Ginta on this one with respect to my colleagues, Mr. Lau, Bennett. I too kind of see that this lot is, while not unique in the district, there are other lots on the water, or there are other lots around, the busy street. But I only really see 2 lots that are, that are both on the water, on a busy road, and adjacent to this bridge, which I happen to know well because it's in my neighborhood. I drive it, I see it, and probably all of us do. I wish one of the criteria for a variance was just simple, like sympathy/empathy. Unfortunately, unless something dramatic should happen, that's not one of the criteria. So, as I look at this, I feel that criteria 1, conditions and circumstances are unique to the applicant's lot, structure, or building, and do not apply to the neighborhood land structures or buildings in the same district. I can find myself getting there. And strict application of the provision, which would be adhering this already, we'll call it 8/10 built stone fence/wall, with this purposeful notch, which was designed and intended to receive what I think, in my just own aesthetic, is not an inelegant solution of change in materials and lattice. It is, it doesn't fire off many alarms for me. If done tastefully, I get it. Feel like the rest of it's already there. You're already forgiven the 6-foot, ness of the columns. You're entitled to that. So we're really only talking about the additional 2 feet in lattice, which is a material change. I get the aesthetic. I too, with my colleagues, agree that the 3rd criteria, the unique conditions and circumstances, are not the result of any actions of the applicant. And I kind of align myself with the notion that the 4th criteria, which is that relief would not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with limitations upon the properties in the district. This isn't a special privilege, but rather addressing a very unique circumstance that is tied to all of the first elements for me. Shape, topography, size, plus the proximity to, I think, a unique, even unlike High Street, people start to velocitize here as though they're getting onto 95 or 95. And same thing when they're decelerating to get back over that bridge into the city. I just get it. And the alternative, I think, this applicant would be forced to do something else in that notch, and probably without any of our relief could put greenworks in there, could plant, bushes, and the bushes could be 10 feet high if they wanted to be. I don't know that they would, but I just think that the design doesn't strike me as being terrible. Actually, it's a lot of work and a lot of stonework in particular, trying to address a specific circumstance. So I too can find myself to support it. before we sort of close this, is there any other deliberations that we should address? Because given the numbers, what you're hearing, it sounds like three potentially members are inclined to be supportive, two are not, which falls short by one. I would, as we do for anyone, I would give an applicant the opportunity to withdraw or just receive the denial. But let me press pause for a moment, just make sure that we've concluded deliberations. Anything further? Yes, Mr. Minton.
What, I'm just brainstorming here, maybe it's not our place, but would it make other members, more comfortable with this if we were actually looking at what the fence would look like? Because right now, we're just being told it's just a wooden fence with a cap on it first. Maybe the fence would beautify the neighborhood, I don't know.
Is it solid?
It would be, the illustration that's up here
I
as
thought
far
we
as,
saw that.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought, yeah, so it's lattice, squared lattice or,
Are we talking about?
Yeah, let's.
I think we're talking about
Fence is what we're
80
talking about,
80
right.
feet of 6-foot fence
Be clear
versus
about
this, I think is the objective.
it's. On the full wooden fence, it's gonna match the lattice work, that's the design, so on the top image on the right hand side. It's 5 feet up. And then that lattice work matches,
but it's 5 feet of what?
solid, so it'd just be tongue and groove board,
So it would be
Solid.
a solid.
solid wood.
And did you say that where there's a cedar fence going down to the water, there's currently a vinyl fence
There's
there?
currently a vinyl fence there that we're gonna leave there, it's been existing, so that, I think that existing section of fence is roughly like 45-50 feet long. As it stands today, so we have a gap here.
May I ask a question? Just
Of course.
on this, like. My colleague's concerned about safety, is the entire lot fenced, including the portion that goes down towards the river?
We have a
I didn't think
fence,
so.
we have a fence that goes across the top of the wall. That goes from Spofford Street back to Mosley.
Right,
Then there's just a natural stone wall that separates the property, and then there's a fence that we're proposing to go from the corner of the lot corner back to the bridge to kind of fence it out.
but there's not a fence,
On the Mosley side, no,
right,
that's the only side that doesn't have any fence.
so. That's,
Right, so, can I interject?
please do.
Thank you. So is the vinyl fence is still there?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is?
Yeah,
All but 20 feet of it or 30? What
But
is
so-
it?
yes, and the numbers, I didn't pull a tape measure out for it, but all but, let's call it 30 feet, that's between the wall and where the vinyl fence starts.
I'll make one observation. I am not so much concerned about the lattice work on the stone fence. It's tasteful. Is it greater than 4 feet? Yes, it's not solid. It's arguably within the spirit of, I think, what the city council was getting at when it didn't want to have high barriers to block people in their home. Yeah, I listened to my colleagues and I could be convinced that certainly is something that is in this context acceptable. I do continue to have a problem with the 5-foot solid wall fence running some 75 feet. That's my primary concern. So I just put that on the table, Mr. Chairman, for.
Currently, it'll be 30 feet that we'd be kind of fixing, because the existing fence we're not gonna take down.
So the existing vinyl fence, which is already 6 feet.
Correct.
Which runs 60 feet of the 80 more or less.
Yep.
Will remain in place.
Yes.
So the gap, which is fenceless at the
Correct.
moment.
We're trying to replace
Well-
all to improve the overall look of the property.
But if you were successful in this hypothetical this evening, you would replace that vinyl
Correct.
with the consistent material and configuration.
And carry it all the way through.
That,
Wait, but may I ask, did you install the 6-foot vinyl fence?
It was because,
was there.
yep, this is whole lot.
Okay.
Property.
When you bought the property, the fence was there.
So right now, you're looking at two scenarios, you're either gonna fill a hole, or you're gonna do the whole thing.
But I mean, our preference would be to replace the whole fence with a new consistent.
They could close the gaps with a
I see.
4-foot fence
With a 4-foot,
without any relief.
Right.
Except there would be a third material change, along that line,
They look on.
which would be a third material change, right? And a third change in elevation. It would look, be some fence entropy, but
So just so we get and clear about this, you're asking us to approve a run of approximately 30 feet of new 6-foot fence,
Yes.
But you would,
which will be running down the fence line to an existing 6-foot vinyl fence.
That I would prefer to replace.
I got it. So you want to replace the entire thing?
Correct.
Okay,
right.
that's what you intend to do, but there's an existing fence, 6-foot fence that runs some many feet
Correct.
there right now.
Yep.
And you can't just take the vinyl fence down and put up a new fence with the same height, right? That doesn't work, because if you do that, then you're subject to the VIF6.
We have, I'm not
We don't
sure if
wanna-
we can replace that or not without a permit. That's beyond
I
my.
give you back.
I think repairing, so it depends on the interpretation by the building department, or I should say the zoning codes commissioner principally. Which is it repair and replace sort of in situ, or is it new structure? I mean, I think that from our standpoint, we should consider this as a holistic thing or not at all. I mean, that's their intent. They want to take down the vinyl 6-foot fence. If not successful here, I'm guessing they would leave that because they would have to. And they would fill in the gap with 4 feet, which they can do. And it would be a wood tongue and groove material that's being proposed that would just be a different material along with the vinyl and then transitioning again into the stone. Is that right? I mean, is that fair?
And then
I
the 2
apologize,
feet
I'm
of
just not
copper
right.
that, the 2 feet of lattice work.
And then the
that
2
goes
feet of
on top
lattice work.
Yeah, just to tie it all in, so it's basically
Right.
taking an
No, I
old
get
classic
it.
New
I-
England form all the way down. the
And
street.
you
Forgive us,
could,
like,
you could
we're-
put
we're-
plantings on top, like in terms of, right,
Planters,
you could
large
put
hedge,
planters,
you
you
could
could put
get
hedges,
around
you
it,
could,
but
so it's.
For not to.
Okay, I think that helps clarify for me too.
Yeah, it doesn't for me, because
No, no.
I prefer not to, it's not a variance.
No, I don't mean to suggest that it's to dissuade or persuade you, but just for me, I don't think I fully understood that vinyl fence was staying, so that helped me, but it still may not carry the day, but, okay. Anything further in deliberations? Bennett, anything further from you?
No.
Okay. All right,
We're happy to come back with some more pictures of what's there, with some more detailed answers to your question, if you would
I mean-
prefer to continue this.
it's up to you if you want, I mean, I'm content.
If I can
with-
help answer some of those questions to give some better clarity, I'm happy to do that.
I can poll the members and see if we're clear whether other additional material would be helpful, but for me, just as one voting member, the additional information you provided more clarified things for me, and I'm content with sort of the imagery that you've provided. But, Mr. Ginta, how about you?
I'm content, with the information I have, I mean,
Okay. Mr. Bennett?
It would help me to see that additional information.
Okay, Mr. Delisle?
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, and Ms. Scott?
I'm good, but I
Okay.
appreciate
So-
some of the,
Thank you. Okay, so it sounds like err on the side of inclusion of more information. We would entertain a request for a continuance. And Caitlin, when could we bring, when could we bring Mr.
Next
Bailey?
meeting, December 10th.
December 10th?
Yes.
Okay, December 10th, okay. All right, on the applicant's request, do we have a motion to continue the application for additional information, materials and design for December 10th? Meeting of December 10th, just motion to continue.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lau, and seconded by
Second,
Mr. Bennett. Motion's made by Mr. Lau, seconded by Mr. Bennett on the motion to continue the application to December tenth, calling the roll, Mr. Lau.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
yes,
Mr. Ginty.
Yes.
Mr. Scout.
Yeah.
And I vote yes, that's 5 in the affirmative, the ayes have it. So we'll see you on the tenth, and thank you for
Yeah,
your
thank you very
patience
much.
and time.
No problem.
Moving on to our fourth and final application this evening. This is the application of Judith Bliss Welsh, trustee of the Judith Bliss Welsh Trust, care of Lisa Mead, Talman and Costa LLC. This is the application for 101 Curzon Mill Road, a variance request. The applicant seeks all necessary approval and permits to construct a garage with a second floor office. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. It's been enlightening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. Lisa Mead, Talman Costa, 30 Green Street, on behalf of the applicant, Judith Welch, who is trustee of the Judith Bliss Welch Trust. And with me this evening is Richard and Judith Welch, who are the owners of the property, and also my colleague, Ryan Clemens. The architect on this project is Andy Sidford, and the engineer is Everett Chandler, and we have a wetland specialist as well. As we'll talk about in a little bit, Tom Hughes will be doing the permitting from the conservation point of view. As the chair indicated, the Welches are seeking a variance to construct a garage on the property, which is across the street from their home. If you go to the next slide, Caitlin. Which is across the street from their home, which is the former mill on Curzon Mill Road. So I don't know if any of you took the time over the weekend or some other time to drive down to the property. But if you go all the way past Maudsley Estate down to the very end of Curzon Mill Road, the Welches live in the mill, which is the last house on the left, right before the bridge that you can walk across into West Newbury. I have a long story about the bridge from when I first came there. And then on, the right-hand side is an empty lot, which is also is part of the mill, but separated by the street, which the Welch's own, which is where we're proposing to place the garage. But the property is in the agricultural conservation zoning district. It includes 14,049 square feet of area, where 400,000 square feet are required. It includes 172 feet of frontage, where 300 feet is required. And due to a series of merger and separation issues, which I laid out in our cover letter, from the time the lot was created in 1959, where at that time the AgCon district required only 75 feet of frontage and did not have a minimum lot area requirement. So as a result, that's what the lot was when it was created. The property is vacant and is bounded by the Artichoke Reservoir and by, which also as a result includes the FEMA floodplain zone, runs through almost the entire property. The 150-foot and 25-foot buffer zones also extend through the entire property as well. You can go to the next slide. So if you look at this MyMaps GIS, it's really helpful to show the property. So you can see the property outlined in yellow here. The garage is to be located in the upper corner of the property that's closest to the land and not to the river, to the right and towards the middle. And you can see the mill, which is located right on the Artichoke and the stream or the river that connects the lower and upper Artichoke. And where you can also see there's no place to put any additional buildings, obviously. The property to the rear is owned by the city of Newburyport due to a gift that was provided by the Welch family. The property to the back of the mill is owned by the sisters, Richard, and then also the Mulligans live right up on the back behind that, and then the house at the top on Curzon Mill Road is actually owned by the Commonwealth, and then the Commonwealth owns all the property up in the back. So we can talk about that as we go through this as well. Next slide, please. And here you can see, I think that what's important about my maps is you can see the shape of the property, and as you can see in the GIS, you can see how the water runs right up to the edges of this property. And we'll be able to show you the topography in a little bit, but there's some significant topographical challenges as well as the shape and soil conditions caused by the river as well. Next slide, please. And so this is, as you're driving down Curzon Mill Road, there's a gate, and the barn, or garage will be built before the gate, right behind that split rail fence on the left-hand side. So that's the proposed location of where the garage is to be built. You can see, beyond the pickup truck down the road, you can see the mill, and beyond the mill is the river. Next slide, please. Again, this is a little better view of that. You can see the gate that shuts off there, and you see the telephone pole, and that's actually right behind that split rail fence is approximately where the garage is proposed to be built, and you can see the mill beyond as well. It is of note that there is no parking along either side of the roadway, all the way starting up at actually starting at Ferry Road, so all the way down the road. Next slide, please. And again, there's one of the no parking signs. You can see the location, and this is actually a good shot because you can see the river beyond, but you can also see the undulations in the land as well. So you see the split rail fence, which is kind of the high point of the property, and then it dips down, and you're gonna see on our elevations, you'll show that's floodplain under there. The proposed garage is to be built on pilings. And then it kind of goes up again in the back and then down again right at the river. So even with the drop down towards the river, property in and of itself, the upland part of the property has some topographical challenges. Next slide, please. Again, this is just another shot of the area where the garage is proposed to be built. Next slide. And this is looking as if you're standing in that location, looking down at the mill. And next slide, please. So the proposal is to build a 26 by 34 foot garage that is 19 feet tall at the mean. The garage will be used for parking and for storage. The current mill doesn't obviously offer any parking or storage. Actually, there is no parking at the mill. The Welches park up at Mr. Welch's sister's house and walk down to the mill. And so the idea is to actually have some parking, covered parking, storage, as well as an office on the garage's second floor. It will be considered a principal structure on that lot because it's the only structure on the lot. But the use will be accessory to the single family use, which is the mill. And as I indicated, I will indicate at the end, and there's a proposed condition as well, that should the board find that they are willing to approve this variance, it could include a condition that will always be accessory to the mill. So there is no concern that it would be ever split off from the mill, which of course is not the intention of Welch's, and nor was it ever the intention since the lot was originally created in 1959, which was supposed to be together with the mill because it only offered the only extra space because there is no outdoor space at the mill given this location on the river. The proposed garage would include a 4-foot front yard setback where 50 feet is required in the AgCon district. And as you're going to see on the plan in a minute, I'm going to show you, even though it's only a 4-foot setback from the property line, it's actually 23 feet back from the paved right of way. So as you could see in the GIS photos, the lot is kind of catty corner away from the paved roadway. So it actually sits 23 feet back from the roadway, albeit only 4 feet from the property line. And then there's a 2-foot side yard setback where 50 feet is required. That is because of the floodplain and also because of the buffer zones setting back from the river. Also, given the lot area requirements from the AgCon district and the frontage requirements in the AgCon district, given the merger issue, we're seeking a variance for the lot area and frontage. Both of the properties abut the waterway between the upper and lower Artichoke Reservoir, which constrain the property. As I noted before, the property is in a floodplain, and as a result, the garage will be built on pilings. So next slide, please. So here is the site plan. At the top is Curzon Mill Road. To the left top corner is the mill. And what you can see is, and also right above the purple left edge of the driveway, you see the gate running across the road. Caitlin, can you just put your cursor on that? Thank you. So that's the gate, just to give you an idea of where the location is. So that's the driveway entrance. And you can see the property line set back pretty significantly from the paved right of way. And then you see the orangish color, that's the proposed garage location. And then you can see it also sits right up against the property line as well. You can see the floodplain lines that run through and the 100-foot, 20-foot and 50-foot buffers that run through this as well. You can see the buffer line that actually runs through the corner, the lower left-hand corner of this proposed location. We do need Conservation Commission approval for this as well. But that's the location on the lot. Next slide, please. And as I indicated earlier, this is actually the Conservation Commission plan. We show that so you can see that it's built on pilings. The reason it's built on pilings is because you can't take up any flood storage area in the floodplain. So you have to build it up on pilings. You have to make sure that the horizontal members of the first floor are above the floodplain. You're allowed to have the vertical posts. You do have to make up the flood storage area for the vertical posts. But otherwise, we have to raise it above the floodplain. So as you come in off the road, you're gonna go up a little bit. There's gonna be a little bit of a ramp to get into park your car on the first floor. But that is those are the elevations and the Conservation Commission map. You can see the floodplains, the buffer zones. Caitlin, if you take that arc that goes right through the one boundary line that goes right through the garage, the proposed garage. See the arc? There you go, right there. I think that says 100-foot buffer zone right on it. There you go. So that's the 100-foot wetland buffer zone. So you can see the reason we're up as far as we are is A, to get out of the floodplain, and B, to get up as far out of the buffer zone as we possibly can. Next slide, please. Here are the elevations. So the front elevation that would face Curzon Mill, you can see is on the right-hand side of this drawing. And you've got a dormer at the top to allow some light in for that office area at the top, and then 2 garage doors with enough space for storage on either side. The left-hand side is the rear, which would face the back and the city of Newburyport property to the rear. Next slide, please. And then you can see on the right-hand side, that's the side facing the artichoke. And then on the left-hand side is the view that you would see coming down Curzon Mill Road. Next slide, please. So as you have discussed slightly in your hearing prior to this, the board may grant a variance where it makes a finding under section 10H6A of the zoning ordinance, where it finds that owing to the circumstances relating to the soil condition, shape, or topography of the land or structures, that there is a hardship that especially affects the land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it's located, that a literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, on the petitioner or applicant, that desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the purpose and intent of the ordinance. So as we go to the first one related to the hardship related essentially to the land, which is in this instance, the soil conditions, topography, set and shape. In that instance, as I indicated earlier, and as the NOI plan depicts, the floodplain runs into this property. Really, the only developable part of this property is up in that top corner. There is no other part of this property that a structure could be built because of the wetlands and because of the floodplain. There is no other location. Because of the shape of the lot and in particular the natural flow of the Artichoke River, it has a very unique shape, which the applicant did not create. And even if the lot were larger, it still would have that unique shape given the natural condition of the river. And finally, as I indicated, even the topography of the lot is unique in and of itself, where there are uplands, there are wetlands and lowlands in between in the lot itself, not just the as it goes down to the river. Those conditions affect the soil condition, shape, and topography, and are naturally occurring, and therefore is a hardship in this particular instance. And therefore, it could not build not only this structure, but it could not build any structure unless it were located in that particular location on the property. And so a strict application of the ordinance would require the Welches to build a garage elsewhere or nowhere and not put anything on this property at all. And therefore, that would be a substantial hardship for them, which would prohibit any structure and not just this structure. Literally, as I said, there is no other location on the property despite its 14,000 square foot size. And this location is the best and only location for the Welches to build a garage or any structure on the property, but in particular a garage, which would alleviate a hardship they're having at the mill as well. In this instance, providing a variance will avoid the hardship and in turn actually promote the public good. 84 Curzon Mill's use as a single family home keeps the mill standing in good condition. We are preserving its history and importance of the city of Newburyport by solidifying its ongoing use by adding this additional space across the street. It will support the beneficiary's single-family use, contributing to preserving the mill. It will promote the safety of the applicants, the neighbors, their guests, and public to use Curzon Mill Road instead of having to walk up and down from their sister's property, which is further up Curzon Mill Road. Indeed, as I indicated earlier, parking is prohibited along the entire road and indeed beyond. There's even a gate that is beyond this proposed area to the Welch's home. And there's no place to park at the mill itself. By removing cars from parking dangerously on the sides of the road, even temporarily, this would be a benefit and promote the intent and purpose of the ordinance. I think it's also important to look at the overall purpose of the zoning ordinance, which is to promote the health, safety, and convenience, general welfare of the inhabitants of the city of Newburyport, and in particular to conserve the value of property with due consideration for the character of the zones and their peculiar suitability for particular uses. I thought that one is specifically addressed by what's being proposed here. By allowing the garage to be an accessory to the mill promotes the health and welfare and convenience of the Welches and their future generations using their property, but also it will conserve the value of the mill property, an important asset to the history of the city of Newburyport, and has no detrimental impact on the character of the district overall. In fact, there's nothing else around there and would be an appropriate complement to the mill. And so it squarely fits into that particular part of the purpose where there's a peculiar suitability for this particular use in this location, which is straight on a requirement or a purpose, one of the purposes of the ordinance. And of course, it would lessen congestion in the streets as well by taking a couple of cars off the street. The natural conditions of the property are caused, as I said, by the dropping land towards the artichoke. The soil conditions and the shape of the property are not a result of the applicant's actions. The historic uses related to merger which affect the property are a result of the settlement of estates and then the conveyance of property to the city of Newburyport. And frankly, when the property was conveyed to the city of Newburyport and the land was originally created as an A&R in 1959 when it was a legal lot, they never indicated thereafter when new plans were created that it wasn't a buildable lot. And so when the land was conveyed to the city of Newburyport and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts elsewhere, that was never indicated. And so this was not by Richard and Judith, but by others, and frankly, for the welfare of others in the city of Newburyport to preserve the land above. So that's quite frankly beneficial and not by their doing. And finally, granting a variance will not constitute a special privilege inconsistent with other properties in the district. The condition of this lot being located in this location along a street which ends at the river, includes a home on the Artichoke River, which has no land available to it, is unique among the AgCon district. Most of the land in the western part of the city in the AgCon district are larger areas that have access not right along the Artichoke or the upper or lower, and are not necessarily used by private residences at all. So if you could go to the next slide, please. I took, and one more. There we go. So this is a large view, and back down in the corner, very small, you can see this property. Oh, no, you're up, yeah, you're up there, go up to the river. Can you see the property with the blue? There you go. That's this property. That entire green is the AgCon district. So there is no, and you can see the size of the parcels in the rest of the district. But also, those parcels are more uniform shape, and none of them are quite located where this is, and the other parcels have access in other locations, or no access at all, or don't have their residence, if you will, across the street and sitting on the river with no other space available to it. So I think the historic nature of the mill, coupled with this parcel that's supposed to go with the mill, is very unique in the rest of the AgCon district. And so by granting relief here, you are not granting a special privilege to this particular lot that would be different than any other thing that you would see in the rest of the AgCon district. I did provide letters of support from the other two residents that live on Curzon Mill Road. The rest of the property is owned by the city of Newburyport of Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I haven't gotten any letters from them. And so I also indicated that the Welches are absolutely fine with and request that you have a condition, if you were so inclined to approve this application, that this would have to be accessory to the mill, because that's always how it's been deeded out anyway. So we would be fine with that condition, because that's the full intent. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Thank you, Attorney Newt. We'll close that portion of the public hearing, go to public comment. Anyone in the room wish to speak in connection with the application? There's no one online, so. Oh, I'm sorry, there were two folks online.
No,
Oh, none.
That was you.
That was me? Okay. We'll close the public comment and go to questions from the board. Anyone wanna lead off? Mr. Ginter?
I have a few, just for a little bit of clarity. The property owners, do they own both pieces of property?
Yes.
One just happens to be across the street, so their property doesn't run.
No, it's the street, yeah, correct. They own both pieces, the street runs in between.
Okay, that was the first one. Is this barn going to be, I call it barn garage, is it going to look like it belongs on the property? Is it gonna look historic?
Yes, so if you could go to the architectural drawings, I don't know if Andy put the materials
I think
on there.
the fact that barn slipped out of my mouth is kind of what I'm
Right.
thinking the outside should
So
like.
I think it's,
be shingled
Right.
like the mill.
yes, it's gonna be shingled like the mill. Right,
And will those be natural shingles or?
right, they'll be natural
They
shingles,
will.
cedar
Okay.
shingles, right.
And the roof will be what material?
Probably architectural shingles.
Yeah, okay. What will be inside this building? Will there be any utilities in the building?
So there would be electric, because it's gonna be an office upstairs.
Okay,
And there is, the cars will park in there, but there will be electric in there. I don't know, that there would be water in there, maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah.
at my age, a bathroom might.
So there might be a bathroom on the second floor, right?
okay, all right. You're gonna raise this because it's close to the river.
That's right.
You said that there's gonna be a ramp. What would the ramp be made of?
It's earth, right, it's gonna be graded up, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's graded up, because if you go to the, there you go. So there's you see the foundation that's in front of the first pile. So on the left is the front of the garage in that elevation, right? And so do you see the foundation that they have there? So this is graded. So this is a wall, underground wall right there. So the piles start here. So here's the earth right there. So they'll be graded up to right here. In that area. There may be some material there, but it's graded up.
All right, and, you had said you've not been through conservation yet?
No, because if we, you always decide what you're gonna do. So first of all, under the Wetlands Protection Act, the Conservation Commission actually can require you to get other permits first. They don't have to go first, so to speak. But if we can't get a variance, then we're not gonna spend all the money to go to conservation, right? So, but in order to even do this, to see that it was possible, we had to do a lot of the conservation work. It's already, obviously, the wetlands have already been delineated, they've done all the calculations for stormwater. We actually have an engineer already on board that have done the stormwater calculations to determine where the pilings would go and what would be displaced from the floodplain.
Got it.
Right.
They seem to be building on a delicate area.
Very delicate, yeah, right. Okay. And that's why it has to be in that corner of the lot.
Got it. All right, thank you.
I'm just curious, this isn't really relevant to us, but Concom, but how would you mitigate the displacement of the stormwater with filings like?
So
Out of curiosity.
So I'm not the engineer, but, so there's a calculation, a square footage, so the pilings are, they're not giant,
Yeah,
so
of course.
it's whatever that square footage is that has to be mitigated. So maybe they do an excavation that is a little bit lower underneath,
To
you know how,
basically,
because it goes like this.
to replace, so it's a sort of offsite or onsite.
It's not offsite, it has to be
So it's
onsite.
onsite mitigation of.
So underneath the, right, so underneath,
Got it.
correct, so underneath the, Mr. Bennett is, he's correct by his so if you can see how this earth goes like that,
Yeah,
all you need to do is like take a little piece out here and you compensate for the
got it.
stormwater.
Okay, great. I was just curious. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
Just a few, if I may. So, I want to make sure I understand. Currently, the clients live in the mill.
Yes,
There is no room on that lot to build a garage.
none,
Your clients currently do not park on that lot?
no.
How far away do they park?
So if you could go to my first GIS. That's what I said. So. The Welches live here in the mill. Right here, as you can see, it's built on the water. There's no space here. This is where they're parking.
Well, up the driveway,
Up here,
up to the garage.
up here.
Would
If
you
you-
consider that a substantial hardship to have to park there and walk all the way down to your house?
I consider that a substantial hardship, but I consider more hardship that you can't do anything at all on here.
I understand.
Except for locate something up in this corner.
I understand.
And that's not their, that's by grace that they're
This is-
parking there, right? They don't have an easement to
No.
park there, it's just
It's by
the neighbor
grace.
is letting them park there.
Sister-in-law.
Yeah, it's a,
You thought of a tunnel.
A tunnel.
yeah, be no permits involved. Yeah.
I have,
All right.
I do have a follow-up question, and I think you just answer it. Essentially, without a variance, there's nothing they can build on that lot.
Can't build anything on this lot because of the floodplain and because of because the 100-foot buffer goes here, then the 50-foot buffer goes here. The only place to build is right up here. We actually looked to see if you could put something here because it's closer, right? And it's beyond the gate, but you can't put anything there. The only place to build is right in this corner. And we tried to pull it away, but you can't because you get too far into the floodplain.
Yeah, please.
Can I follow up on that? So could you even put a surface parking spot on this?
No.
And that's
you
more
can't
out of
because of the
curiosity,
floodplain. No, I think the answer is no, because you can't compensate for it. Right now, you've taken up your floodplain, so the answer is no.
And then that was just a follow-up question on Ms. Scott's question. My question was, could you go over the old zoning again and how this little lot actually, it seemed to me when you were doing the presentation that at the time, in 1959, someone thought it would be okay to do this. And obviously, since they owned all the land at that time, if they had known that the agricultural conservation area was going to be such a much larger square footage requirement in the future, they could have
Done
cut it
it,
up however they wanted.
right. So in 1959, John P. Marquand owned all of the land, right? When it was created, the property met the zoning district which required only 75 feet of frontage. And the purpose was to divide it up so that the mill had a parcel to go with it.
Because the mill has no, as we said, I think,
Nothing.
it has nothing.
Correct. The property was conveyed in 1959 to Christina Marquand Welch, who was the wife of Richard E. Welch Jr., Richard's father, and the daughter of John P. Marquand. However, later in 1974, John P. Marquand conveyed Jr.
Not John P. Marquand.
Correct, Jr.
The author conveyed the mill and the lot, the 101, to my mother. He then conveyed to his son, John P. Marquand Jr., the yellow house next door.
Oh, okay, I see.
Then he conveyed the additional property to Christina Marquand Welch, which property abutted, which is now the property that's owned by the city of Newburyport, which it looks like that, like it's all dried out,
The
right?
field.
That's the one, right?
Yeah,
It's the field, right? So when that happened, that's when it merged. They all thought they had separated it out, it was fine. But then all of that property was conveyed to Christina Welch, okay? She passed away and then bequested all of the land to Richard E. Welch,
My father.
his father. In 1989, Richard E. Welch Jr. devised the mill again and the property to Richard. Right, so now it comes back out like it was supposed to originally. Thereafter, that's when the AgCon district required 130,000 square feet and 300 feet of frontage, right? So it lost its, right, it merged again. So it was conveyed out, but it didn't meet the zoning requirements,
yeah.
right? It had merged, so, and it didn't indicate that it wasn't buildable when it was conveyed back out again. So from that date, that it was originally created, it was clearly a lot in and of itself with the mill across the way. So then in 2014, Elizabeth M. Welch, Christina M. Welch, Matthews, Margaret Welch, Christina Strauss deeded the adjacent parcel to the city of Newburyport. And contemporaneously, Richard deeded the parcel, noted, there's another parcel, the city of Newburyport, there were A and B. That was also conveyed to the city of Newburyport. So they conveyed this land to the city of Newburyport, retained the piece that's here and the mill themselves, right?
And the road that separates the mill and the parcel that we're discussing, that's a real road and that separates, it's not like a right of way or an easement
No,
or
it's
something like
Curtis
that?
and Mill Road.
Yeah, okay.
It goes over into West Newbury now by foot.
Now by foot, but it
Right.
still remains,
It's-
it can go away, it's not a paper street or
No,
whatever, it's a real.
It's road, it's
yeah.
never been discontinued, it's never been abandoned, it's a
Right.
road.
Right, okay. Very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Sorry.
I'm as well. Any questions?
No further questions,
further?
thank you.
All right, very good. We'll close that portion and go to our deliberations. And again, deliberating the variance criteria. Who wants to begin?
I'll give it.
Better.
Based upon this presentation, this strikes me as the paradigm case for relief by way of variance contemplated by our zoning ordinance. I'm typically hung up on the question of whether or not there's a substantial hardship that would be suffered if we were to fail to provide the relief requested. This case is unique in that not only is there is a current substantial hardship, i.e. Attorney Mead's clients seem to be having to hike for some 100 feet to get home because they can't park on the street and they have no room to park on their property. So they have to be lugging groceries and the like through rain, sleet, and snow. That to me strikes me as a substantial hardship. So the question arises then, can this substantial hardship be fixed by virtue of a variance being sought here? The applicants asks us to approve a variance on a parcel of land which is uniquely limited by its environmental conditions with respect to the ability to develop anything on that site without asking for the variance sought here. So I find that this is that all the boxes have been ticked for a variance here. The circumstances relating to the lot itself creates the substantial hardship. There's no other way to remedy that substantial hardship. I thought it was noteworthy that Mr. Delisle noted that even a slab of asphalt here could not be constructed on this accessory lot. I also find that it's compelling that this is an accessory lot and just that, which is advantageous. And finally, the historic nature here adds a dimension which I think I, for one, cannot overlook given its historic significance. So for those reasons, I'm prepared to approve this request for variance.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Anyone else wish to add to or continue Mr. Bennett's thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Bennett in this matter. I think importantly, what the relief being asked for here are all, I think there are 4 dimensional variances as well. We're not, we're asked to grant relief from dimensional requirements in the AgCon zoning district, which is, as very helpfully pointed out by the last map that you went through, it's a very unique, the AgCon district is a unique place in and of itself, and this is a crazy, unique lot in that district where all the other lots are basically very, very large. So this is certainly something that is unique to this district. And I think that what Mr. Bennett has gone through with respect to the criteria is spot on. And I do think that this is, as he said, the quintessential case for the approval of a variance.
Anyone else?
I would just add that, to what you said, that some of the relief sought is for, the setbacks, but I think you've made a compelling case that there is no other place to build, if anything were to be built on that lot. And I think that, Mr. Bennett otherwise summed it up very well.
And Mr. Gaetano?
I support the application. It is definitely a hardship and they put a nice plan together to potentially build on the only spot that they possibly could.
I agree. I wouldn't be able to add anything further. I think it's all been said. So I too can support it. Any further deliberations before we close? Seeing none, we'll close deliberations. And do we have a motion in a second?
I will move that the application for variance application 24-11 for 101 Curzon Road be approved.
Very
Do you
good.
want to add that special condition?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Steve.
The condition about the that it would be accessory to the.
Yeah, subject to the condition that the proposed garage will perpetually be an accessory use to the primary use at 84 Curzon Mill Road and shall not become a primary residential structure or accessory dwelling unit or similar.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Motion with condition has been made, and do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Motion's made with condition and seconded, calling the roll, Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Gibson. Yeah. Ms. Scout.
Yes,
And I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. The motion carries.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you, and good luck. Nice to see you. Cheers. Okay, that concludes our public hearings this evening, and with that, we'll close public hearings for the ZBA meeting of 11/12/2024. Business meeting, we really only have the approval of our minutes of 10/22. Any comments, changes, direction? We have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Seconded?
Second.
Great. All those, this is a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or no votes? The ayes have it. Motion carries. It's approved. Thank you, Gretchen. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's a crazy lot, huh?